Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Time Warp, the show where we take a wrestler, remove them from their time period, and see how they would do somewhere else along the wrestling timeline. My name is Paul Laporte. Joining me is my partner in crime, Mike Miner.
Yep, relaxing in my yoga pants.
And normally we do Time Warp on a specific wrestler, but we've actually had a user feedback request from Colin Kazim on a group, a stable, to see how they would do in a different time. And the stable that we are going to be covering is the New Day.
That sounds great. You know what?
I was waiting for you to do the New Day thing
New
like
Day?
you were doing beforehand.
Well, I have to unbunch myself here in my yoga pants, so...
So, we're going to be talking about the New Day, and we're going to be seeing how the New
Day
would do in the Attitude Era, per request of Mr. Kazim. And I hope I'm saying your name right, Colin.
Kazim.
If not, please correct me.
Yeah.
So, he wanted to know how we felt the New Day would do in the Attitude Era.
Short. Fantastic.
Okay. I disagree.
Do you really?
I do.
Well, all right. I think I see where you're going with it.
Let's first discuss at least the fact that New Day going in the Attitude Era is interesting because the Attitude Era was really seen as the stable era, as the gang wars, as it were. You had a ton of stables, not just the ones that everybody remembers, like Degeneration X and the Nation of Domination, but you have Los Boricuas and the Disciples of Apocalypse and the Oddities, and it seemed the Truth Commission was a little bit before, I guess. But I mean, there was a period in time where WWE just loved experimenting with stables and groups of guys, and the New Day would have that advantage going for them that they could be in this period of time. So that is kind of one of the best things for them if they were to have showed up at the Attitude Era. I think the fact that WWE would have allowed them to be a group is a big positive for them, because I think all three of those guys, despite the fact that individually they're very good, as a group they are better than the sum of their parts. So I think that's good for the New Day. You think that they would do very well. Why do you think that they would do well?
I don't know, man. I just think the silliness would translate to that time period. I'm not saying necessarily they'd be, a huge part of the gang wars, but I could see them having, run-ins with Degeneration X and then ultimately faltering to the side. They'd probably do some stupid puns on Nude Day and have Naked Midian come around and, try to team up with them and just all sorts of shenanigans. I mean, this is a time period where they had Al Snow and Steve Blackman team up together as Head Cheese. So, there's a place for silliness. Goldust and the Blue Meanie, they'd fall in line with that. I'm not saying that's the most successful they'll ever be, but I can see them standing around for at least a little while. Nation of Domination was always serious, but it never really went anywhere outside of just elevating The Rock. I don't know, like I said, I can see them having a program with at least DX and having it turn out kind of well, but other than that, I'm not really sure. I think it's kind of like anything from that time period where it would last anywhere from a year to 2 years, and then it would just kind of drop off. Mm-hmm. But then again, around that time, that was a very successful run. These days, it can be a lot longer. So,
okay,
from the time the New Day began to now, what was it, about, God, it was well over a year ago that they started. Maybe about within the last 2 years, they kind of got together quietly, and then it happened. I think by that time, if it was in that period, in that era, it would have run its course and it would have been successful.
Okay, I don't think it goes well at all.
I think I see where you're going with this, but I'll let you. I'm gonna let you finish.
Two problems we run into with the New Day and the Attitude Era. Problem one, they immediately get lumped in with the Nation of Domination.
I knew it was going that way.
WWE to this day can't resist having African American people tag with each other and group up. I mean, they did it with the New Day initially, and the New Day, Biggie, Kofi, and Xavier kind of saved it themselves just by sheer force of fucking will and nothing else, because that thing should not have succeeded at all based on what the plans WWE had.
Oh yeah, you turned a page tremendously.
Oh yeah,
from what you felt initially.
Yeah.
I remember.
I hated the New Day when it first started. I thought it was a racist stereotype. It was bullshit. I never disliked the three men.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
I thought they were getting
just
a bad
the whole
rap.
Shtick.
But the fact that they were able to turn around on themselves is tremendous. But I think that immediately they get lumped in with the Nation of Domination. They get lost in the shuffle. That's problem one. Okay, problem two. say we avoid the Nation somehow by some goddamn miracle. WWE, WWF shows the restraint to not group them in with the Nation of Domination.
They're going to be put in the Ministry of Darkness. Boom.
So say WWF keeps their restraint and lets them just be a 3-man group on their own. Here's the chant.
Oh God, I didn't even think of that comment. Ministry of Darkness. That sounds fucking terrible. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about that.
Here's the chant that fills arenas every time the New Day comes out. New Gay sucks.
Yeah.
Because they are silly, they are funny.
You remember when HBK turned heel? HB Gay is what they were saying?
But this is a time period where WWF and heels were macho and badass, and if you were doing something silly, it was talking about your dick or talking about someone's tits.
It's cool to be homophobic.
Or calling somebody gay.
But they'd say, it's okay if you swing that way, but, it's...
Yeah, except that you don't. And if you make a pass at me, I'm going to beat you to death.
What was it, about 2002, it really came to a head with Billy and Chuck, and...
Yeah, so...
And then it was we're not gay. Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, exactly. So... That's the problem, is that New Day shows up if they do, assuming that they don't adjust to the time period, which maybe they do, but then that takes the magic out of them. One of the things that makes New Day so magical and funny is because they are kind of bucking these stereotypes. They aren't like any stereotypical black person that WWE has ever shown before. They're not thugs. They're not... I mean,
God, I hate that term. I hate the term.
Yeah, they're not crime time. They're completely and totally unique. And if they try to go into the Attitude Era and be their brand of uniqueness with their unicorn horns and their trombones, bonus, it gets a shit ton of heat. It gets a lot of heat. But it gets really horrible and disgusting things said and chanted at them on a nightly basis, and that just makes my fucking heart hurt. Do they succeed on, like I said, a level of being a heel faction? Probably. In the same way that Harlem Heat succeeded at fucking Road Wild in Sturgis, South Dakota. But it doesn't have the same sort of... People hate it just to hate it, and because they hate it because they're being, like I said, homophobic or even back then racist, kind of.
You're saying it wouldn't have the same kind of attraction. It would kind of peter out before it would ever...
It wouldn't be a thing where people kind of get behind it because people would not appreciate the creativity of those 3 men. They would just boo them because they're being different and weird, and that caps them. That doesn't let them main event Monday Night Raw. They're around for a brief period of time, and then the group gets broken up because Stone Cold comes out and stuns all of them and has a beer bash and calls them, and then The Rock calls them gay, and then we're done. and then that's the last we hear of the New Day.
Rudy Poo.
So it's like, oh, you 3 are gonna share a room at the SmackDown Hotel because you're faggots or whatever. Like that. Like that's what's gonna happen. So that's why I don't think the New Day succeeds. I mean, in terms of their in-ring work, they're fine. They're gonna be as good as anybody else, if not better. But in terms of that gimmick, and maybe they can pivot it and shift it in a way where it'll play more to the 13-year-old boy who's super, super afraid of anything that isn't like, tits and swearing. But I don't think it plays nearly as well. I really, really don't. And it's sad. It's sad, isn't it, though?
The Rock would talk about them going to the shower together, which would make the 13-year-old boys,
Exactly.
be afraid to change their own locker room at school.
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
it's just it's one of those.
They're not. They get zero merchandise.
The Rock will call them Kumsi Kumsa.
Yeah, they get zero merchandise. They get nothing. They are an afterthought. They are one of the ones that we look back at, like we look at Los Boricuas, like we look at the Truth Commission. Like, remember the New Day guys? How silly was that?
I think they would be more along the lines of, you look at them like, God, these guys were super talented. Why didn't they go anywhere? It's because they were saddled with a stupid shtick.
Right. And the funny thing is that it wouldn't be any different than the shtick that they're doing now. It's just it wouldn't play back then.
Yeah. You know what? I can get behind this.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard not to.
God. The Attitude Era was terrible.
Listen, it had its place. There was some...
The Attitude Era, okay.
It's looked through... I'm going to say it was looked through, with rose-colored lenses. That's as simple as it goes.
I was actually thinking of this yesterday.
It's kind of fun, but other than that, you can't go back to it. And you know what? I'm going to put up an article very soon that talks in depth about this kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
So I have a very, very, very...
but I was coming home from work the other day, and I remember thinking to myself that period of time in wrestling, the Attitude Era, and ECW, and the NWO, that was an awesome period in wrestling if you were a 13-year-old boy. And if you're a 13-year-old white boy, and if you were anything else...
Let's be fair.
Straight white boy.
Let's be fair. The NWO was also cool to guys that watched wrestling in the 80s and the early 90s that were in their 30s because they saw all these guys and they saw such a dramatic change with them, they became cool again.
Sort of. Okay,
so
all right, so we can...
My uncle was a perfect example for me, but that's me personally.
We can shift WCW aside. Yeah. WCW, ironically enough, a little bit more progressive with the stuff they did. Way more racist in terms of, Asian stereotypes and things like that.
Yeah, Sonny Ono with the...
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, that period of time in wrestling was an awesome time to be a wrestling fan if you were a straight white teenage boy. And if you were anybody else, either it just didn't play to you, it seemed stupid, or it was like, this is legitimately, offensive to the person that I am. And that's a problem, and I think that's one of the reasons that the New Day just doesn't play well.
I think we should look back on some of that stuff at some point, and
we will. I mean, that's the thing, is the Attitude Era, there's just so much stuff that you can look at, both good and especially bad, that we will get into.
Definitely.
But that's gonna...
And like I said, I'm gonna wind up putting up a very, very extensive multi-part article soon, so be on the lookout for that. I'm gonna try to go in depth with it. If you look at it, feel free to leave comments when you can, and we'll go from there.
Okay, but so for the sake of argument, though, you kind of mentioned it. All right, so say it doesn't work. What about the three guys individually?
I was going to,
let's talk about that before we wrap things up.
You read my mind.
How do you think Big E does?
I think Big E gets over. Yeah. He's a big guy. He's not like Mark Henry. Mark Henry was a big guy, but they didn't think. God, look at the stuff they did to Mark Henry.
Do you think Big E's gonna be banging Mae Young? Do you think he takes his place? Do you think he just takes Mark Henry's spot?
He's on his way to steal Mark Henry's girl. That's how it goes. Xavier Woods would not stick around. I'd hate to say it, but they'd let him go.
Okay.
They would let him go.
Okay, what about Kofi?
Kofi is interesting. Man. European champion, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe a Intercontinental champ.
Cruiserweight belt was still around at that time, too. He probably fits there.
But you know what?
Does all of his funny Royal Rumble elimination spots.
Yeah,
he gets to do them, 15 years before he did.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that would he fit kind of well into that time frame. I think he, just things being the way they were, he'd probably be pretty much the same place that he was 6-7 years ago in IC title contention, and just a couple of years ago. Would he have a bit more, attitude, so to speak? Perhaps. But I don't think he would do too bad. I think Big E would be a big winner.
How far do you think Big E goes?
I think he would be along the lines of perhaps like a Rikishi. I'm not comparing him directly to Rikishi, who dances around and does this and that, but probably like a heel Rikishi, I guess, where he's in a six person cell match, kind of like a
Is he taking the bump out of the hay truck? Is that what you're implying?
Pretty much, more like a near main event level player, and just below it, but never quite getting past that, kind of like a glass ceiling, I guess.
Fair.
But I see him becoming, like I said, like Kofi Kingston, IC champion, like he has been already, and that's just kind of the position they would stick him in. But then again, if he got over well enough, if he had the 5 count gimmick in NXT, maybe that would have gotten over. I don't know. During that time, he could have been. It's gonna sound weird. He probably could have been a Goldberg type, I guess, but much more athletically proficient.
Yeah,
But,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say.
I think
Kofi will be successful. I think Big E would become successful in his own way. But Xavier Woods, I think they wouldn't know what to do with.
I agree with that to a certain point. I think your analysis is pretty spot on for Big E. Same thing. Glass ceiling is a good term to use.
Yeah.
Kofi.
If overused, try not to use it.
Gets to slot in with, like you said, the European title scene, and if they, right around the time they had their cruiserweights, and they were dabbling with that, he could fit in there. Probably a cruiserweight champion.
I think they were
probably have some good matches
with
the Radicals when they show up.
Yeah.
Xavier Woods sticks around, but he becomes a manager full time. I think because I think he's charismatic enough, and I think that he is smart, super smart. And he'll be able to,
that's a good point.
Even if New Day doesn't get over, which it won't, I don't think. I think he'll be able to change himself up in a way that he'll find something that works and then put himself into that spot because he is good at getting heat, and he is good. He's a very good talker.
He's going to be a doctor too.
Very smart on the mic. So I think that they all stick around. I think New Day itself lasts less than a year.
You know what? I will be the first to admit I underestimated Xavier. I mean, if it's purely from a booking standpoint and he's got no choice to say, I don't know if he'd stick around. But if he had a...
The thing is, though, is the Attitude Era...
But I said, he's smart, and there's a lot more creative...
Yes, and that is something that we're kind of neglecting to think about, is the fact that
exactly.
The Attitude Era
I'm wrong about
was gave people way more creative freedom with their actual
much
characters.
More leeway.
So maybe we're not giving them enough credit. Maybe the New Day does shift and evolve into something that we'll get over more in that time period. It's tough for me to say that because I can't really imagine what they would shift into. Like, they're probably smart enough that they would be able to figure it out, but without becoming, Nation of Domination 2.0, I don't know what they turn into that gets them over, whether over in a positive way or in a heel negative way with the crowd, that doesn't either make them in the Nation 2.0 or make them, boo, you're gay.
You do realize that a couple of years ago when this whole thing started, Xavier took these guys to the side and said, look, we're going to, we got to start something new. You're going to come with me. We're going to do this and that. There was initial plans to kind of present them as the Nation 2.0 just a few years ago. Not even. And then they made better on it. They did these guys as, the positive faces, and then
then plus the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff happened, and that started to be a thing, so WWE got kind of gun shy and backed off.
Yeah, and so, I mean...
And it ended up all the better.
Started sinking, and it's turned out extremely, extremely well.
Yeah, but I just... As a unit, as a group, I think individually they all do okay.
Like I said, I think...
Maybe Xavier Woods ends up managing one of them. Maybe.
Yeah, I
but
think,
as a group...
I thought they would do okay, but maybe I changed my tune a little bit, and, they had maybe a little bit of success, but then, it just kind of peters out because they get swallowed inside, and then they break up within a year, maybe within 2 years.
And then they go off and do their own thing, and then they're probably... fine. They're probably... I mean, fuck, the Godfather's going to the Hall of Fame this year, so maybe, Big E goes in. Like those guys could potentially have good mid-card careers and, end up in the Hall of Fame or something at some point. I just think the New Day, quote-unquote, as a unit, doesn't get over.
I have to change my tune. I concede.
Okay.
I agree on that. I think it just wouldn't work as well as it would today.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Time Warp. Let us know what you think. Be sure to leave us a comment in the comments below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to this video and all of our other videos. Of course, on Mondays, we do Time Warp, this very show. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do Changing the Questions. On Wednesdays, Booking About a Wrestler. And on Fridays, Let's Play TEW. Also, be sure to check out our website, www.changingtheqs.com. That is www.changingtheqs.com, where you will find all of our audio and video shows, as well as articles that you can only find on that website. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter, same handle, at ChangeingTheQs, at ChangeingTheQS. Also, be sure to like us on Facebook, just search for Changing the Questions. If you want to leave us a good old-fashioned email, be sure to send that to changingthequestions@gmail.com. That's going to do it for us. My name is Paul Laporte. That's Mike Miner.
And, next time it's leggings, guys.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.